Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. I'm happy to see everyone here at 9 a.m. on the Wednesday of the conference, so that's pretty good. And I'm very excited to have this panel and hear from these amazing panelists that will share more about their experience building startups in venture capital, in robotics, and many different areas in our industry. So I'm very much looking forward to hear from them. First, we are going to do a quick round of introductions. I'm Antonia, Director of Hilti Venture. I'm investing in construction tech on behalf of the Hilti Group, and very much we are investing into SaaS, robotics, prefab, sustainability, and many other of the amazing areas that are now very much growing in our industry. So Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Thank you very much. My name's Danielle de Buncio. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of a company called VIATechnik. My education's in civil engineering, but my background's working for some of the larger GCs, both on the building and infrastructure side of the construction space. And about 11 years ago, I founded VIATechnik. I like to think of ourselves as solving some of the industry's biggest problems, and we do that through digital workflows. So BIM, virtual design and construction, digital twins is sort of the core of what we do, but really try to think about how are companies leveraging their data, moving from data to insights to action, and really making better, faster decisions from that data.
Hi, Meirav Oren, the CEO and co-founder of Versatile. I normally introduce myself as a serial parent disappointer. So my dad was a general contractor, wanted me to be a superintendent. I ended up at Intel, of all places. But, interesting twist of events. About 5 years ago, my brother, aka not the serial disappointer, actually lost a worker on his job site. And that kind of changed the dynamics of conversation around our household and led to the conclusion that construction is a controllable process. And if that's the case, where would data come from, and how do we empower the actual builders to control their process? So we zoned in on the crane and created an IoT device that actually captures data from the hook of the crane, interprets it, and puts it back in the hands of workers as power. We probably have the most structured and reliable data sets and actual production data coming out of job sites today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Smith. I'm the investment lead for North America with Zacua Ventures. We are a global early stage con-tech venture capital group investing in hardware, software, and new building materials all across US, South America, Europe, and Asia. We have special focus on productivity for the job site, sustainability, and urbanization. My background is a unique blend. So prior to joining Zacua, I was doing corporate innovation with a large commercial general contractor. And prior to that, I worked in tech. So I'm bringing together the perspectives from tech, startups, corporate innovation partners, and now investment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tessa Lau. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Dusty Robotics. I've been in robotics for about 11 years now. Co-founded another company in the hotel robotics space, but about 5 years ago, I decided to start a new company, and I didn't know anything about construction, but I was remodeling my house, and I was horrified by the inefficiency and the dependency on skilled labor that was endemic to the construction industry. When I think about manufacturing, I think about car factories or, streamlined plants where everything is being built by robots. Construction was not that way. And so with my background in robotics, I thought there's got to be a better way. Let's figure out how to do that. What we're trying to do at Dusty is really accelerate the industrialization and digitization of construction.
Thank you all. So also I wanted to remind that if you have any questions, you can write them on the app, and then we will go into Q&A at the end of the session. So the first question for the panel is, construction is one of the industries with the lowest level of digitization, but now we see an increasing number of startups targeting the built environment. Why now, Meirav?
The question is what's next, or? Question is what's next, or?
Why now and
why next? Now? Why not would be the main answer to that. It's an amazing time to start companies, but also to just watch the generations change on job sites as well as in decision makers in GCs. I'll also say labor shortage is another very good reason to start now, and just the wealth of the technology that's around right now. I'm seeing GCs trying things out. I think the real call would be to see scale across the board of the technologies that are ripe, and there's quite a few of those, which is another great reason to do this right now.
When I think about why now, I sort of think there's this like one part problems to be solved, one part opportunities. And I'm hearing that in your answer, right? Like you mentioned the labor shortage, but you also mentioned, right, like GC starting to like crave for some of this technology. So when I sort of look at like the industry landscape, we talked about this a little bit, there's like this perfect storm, right? So there's supply chain issues, there's the labor shortage, right? We consistently struggle to really build more efficiently. And there's a lot that goes into that. But on the other hand, there's so much opportunity. I always try to think about like some of the aging infrastructure that we need to fix, like housing shortages, and just sort of the demands that the built environment has for us. I was talking to one of the bigger GCs yesterday at a dinner, and he was mentioning that his company and many others in that peer group are needing to turn away jobs. There's more demand than we can meet, and I think that creates this like perfect storm of opportunity.
I would add on to that, right? So in addition to all the macro stuff that's happening with the labor shortages and the economy, the technology is starting to get to the point where it's possible to do all of this, right? Revit, BIM modeling, VDC is all taking off. That's being used on a vast majority of jobs right now. And those BIM models are basically the instruction manuals for robots to actually build the buildings. You have a digital version of exactly what you want to have built, and all you need now is the technology that can take those instructions and interpret them and actually cause it to happen. And so all of that technology plus all the robotics investments, which are in some sense fueled by the self-driving car boom, right? All of that technology is coming together at the right time.
I would just add that, yeah, I think COVID really expedited the need for new technology for how we work, right? So suddenly we couldn't all be together when we had to work, and we had to find alternative solutions. And this sort of trend that happened that was out of our control forced us to find new solutions and ways of working together, and has pushed adoption of the industry faster and forward.
Thank you. So following up on this, if we think about the full life cycle of a building, right, we are looking at 50 years or more. So what can we today in the design and building processes of the building to enable new technologies during the operation in the future?
Well, I think that when we talk about robotics or sustainability, right, these are the new tools and trends that we're working with and addressing. And the way to start to incorporate those is to really think with the end in mind, right? So when we think about building a building, we now have tools like robotics to help us with that. So when we start to think about the process for building a building, what are the things that we can use robots for? How can we incorporate them into the workflows? And likewise, we can think about the sustainability of a building from the beginning now and build the building with those thoughts in mind.
So I was having a conversation yesterday with a major building parts supplier, and one of the challenges that he was telling me about is that these 50-year-old buildings, you don't actually know what's inside them. And so when they break down and you have to go fix them, you don't have that certainty. You don't know how to fix it because you don't know what you're starting with. And it becomes even more expensive to go in and figure out what's going on first before you can come up with a plan. And so I think the way that technology and particularly robotics can help with that is to give you that manifest of exactly what's going into your building. And that's part of what we're building at Dusty. You know, we're giving you the certainty that exactly what you design is exactly what you build. And when you know that, then you have that list, that parts list of exactly what's going into your building, and that gets turned over to the owner, and that's what's going to be used for operation and maintenance down the line. And so what we're seeing is like a shift in how buildings are getting built using more technology that's going to enable them to be operated and maintained better into the future.
I love how you put that the 50-year-old buildings, we don't know what's built. There's still so many buildings that are like being built right now that we still don't know what's being built. I feel like sometimes we're like the only industry in the world that can like be done with something and not actually really even know what we just did. And I know that that's like, I don't know, kind of like sensationalized, right? Or like a little bit more dramatic than reality. But the truth of the matter is that we don't always have a really strong understanding or sort of digital foundation of what was built. And if I think about the future, I have no idea what's going to happen. And anybody who tells you otherwise, right, is lying or, I don't know, has a superpower. And so from my perspective, if I think about the life cycle of a building, if we can have a really strong digital understanding of that building, right, have that data underlayer, it's going to unlock opportunities that we can't even imagine today. With that data at our fingertips, we can make better, faster decisions when the world around us starts to change. And I think that that's like so vital to the impact we have on the built environment.
Yeah, and I'll just add to your point, yes, we don't know what the future holds. Well, by actually collecting the data, I'll take the production data that Versatile is collecting. We actually know what it took to install a steel beam. And we have an as-built model, 4D model, that leads you right back to that installation. Are we using it today in full-blown HALA capability? No, but we really don't know what the future holds. And in 50 years, I hope we actually do know exactly what went into that building. And honestly, repeat, those processes don't need to be reinvented absolutely every time. So by measuring, knowing what it actually takes, how long it takes, we're starting to shift towards repeatability and the ability to actually shorten the time of the next job as well as control the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so important when we think about the future of operating the building, but also if we are planning on occupying a building and was built 10 years ago, I think we all want to know what happened, right? And what's in there. Thank you. So next question is, in a building project, there are many stakeholders, and this is also connecting now to the previous one. So from the owner to the architect and to the contractor, what's their role on technology adoption for the construction project?
Well, I'll take the first step on that one. I think everyone plays a role, but where it comes to owners specifically, what I'm seeing and hoping to see more of is actually an owner's push towards technology and actually a demand from the general contractors and everyone else on the job site to actually adopt technology and share that information. And I think that's a huge kind of like transformation. And I encourage way more of that to happen, because when an owner gets involved, not only do they get to see the data and understand how that building was built, so 10 or 50 years from now, you can actually manage the building, but right now, that level of control over the actual constructability and the sheer collaboration between all stakeholders, this is by definition a fragmented industry, and technology can actually bring or solve a big part of that fragmentation. So owners play a bigger part than what they probably believe they do. And when it comes to the subcontractors, I'll say similar, but from a different perspective. Again, that collaboration, the ability to actually look at the same data, understand that we're looking at the exact same picture and make decisions 90% faster than what we're currently used to.
Yeah, I think it's a question that the industry ourselves, we're still trying to figure out, like, what is my role as a GC? What is your role as an owner? So some things I think could help us move forward. Yeah, I agree. The owners have a lot of control and say in this process of tech adoption. And so I think that they can start to think about what they want as their end in mind and the solutions they want to be using. I think general contractors can also start to share more information with each other and with startups, right? We can start to create more interactions between startups and general contractors, just in like friendly ways to like start to exchange information and understand the solutions that are out there. Because I think sometimes we're still operating in silos and we're not even aware of what's possible. And I think that subcontractors, there's a lot of opportunities for innovation and technology adoption there. And they can share ideas and things that they need with their subcontractors as well.
So one of the sayings I heard is that in construction, time is money. And the role of the owners, I would actually challenge any owners in the audience to pay more attention to what's going on in construction, right? Too often they say, okay, that's means and methods. That's not my responsibility. I don't really care how it gets done. Just build the building. But the reality is that there's a lot of technology out there that can actually help you save money on your building. And if you're not paying attention to it, you can't necessarily trust that the people you hire are going to be bringing all of that technology to play on your project. And so if you don't care, if you don't stay involved, you don't get those benefits. What we're seeing on our side is that some of the most tech-forward owners, the big tech companies, they're building a lot of data centers. They're building a lot of corporate campuses right now. And when they get involved in the construction process and they mandate the use of robotics on their projects, they're getting better outcomes. And so I think that's what we need to have. We need that behavior change, and it's driven by people just starting to pay attention and caring more about how the sausage gets made.
Before I add on any other kind of comments in terms of what the stakeholders' involvement is, can I actually try to find out, can I ask you guys a question and sort of see what stakeholders are in the room? I thought of this too because you Tessa, challenged the owners in the room. Who here is an owner? I was worried that was going to happen. Man, okay, GC. Okay, we got a couple. Trade contractor. All right, investor, VC. Okay, and then technology company. Okay. So maybe that's part of the problem, right? At the end of the day, we do all of this for the owner, but it's not their core business, right? Construction, real estate is not their core business. And so they can only get involved so much, right? Their core business is data centers or healthcare or entertainment. And so, I don't know, when I think about the roles and responsibilities we all play, I tell people to be 1 part selfish and 1 part collaborative. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of technology you can put in place that benefits your company, right? And I think about that as an area that you should really be thoughtful about making that investment yourself, right? As a GC, there are a ton of BIM workflows, robotics that will help your business be more efficient, right? Which will help both top and bottom line impacts. And so that's what I mean by selfishness, right? Sort of reflect on what can help you. But 1 part collaboration, right? We're all in this together. We are on a shared mission to make the built environment better. We come together on that project for the owner, for those outcomes, and starting to think about, okay, what's the piece of the puzzle that you sort of play?
So we take that one as being selfish and collaborative at the same time.
Yeah, which I think is okay.
Yeah. So we continuously hear about the labor shortage and how difficult it is to attract talent. What role do you think technology can play on bringing more talent to the construction industry?
Well, we're robots. No, look, one of the reasons I'm really excited about robots is because they're an equalizer. When you're operating a robot, you don't need to be super strong. You don't need to be agile. You don't need to have a lot of physical, toughness or strength. It's like driving a car. When you're driving a car, everyone can go just as fast, right? You don't need to be able to run faster than someone else. And so robotics are kind of like this augmentation of human capabilities that allows everyone, regardless of their ability, to be able to perform the same job at a really high level. And so I think the more we invest in robotics, the more we democratize the industry, and the more we're able to attract that talent that might think, maybe construction is not for me. Robotics actually makes construction for everyone.
I think 2 things. So yeah, we all know that the labor shortage is, partially driven by one generation aging out and partially driven by the newer generation not entering the industry, right? And some of that has to do with the fact that the industry kind of has a bad rep. It's perceived as outdated, behind, and, frankly hard, right? Challenging. And so the use of even simple technologies or tools that if you go through a 4-year degree in construction, you're learning those in school, right? And then you may get to your job and they're not being used at all, right? So then that you start to wonder what was the relation between what I learned in the real world? So I think bringing some of those technologies in will help the new generation feel like there is opportunity for them here to, use the skills that they learned in school and that they were interested in, and that there are opportunities for growth and new skills to be learned. And then I think the other piece of it, which is there's, 5 women on the stage right now, all in construction tech specifically, right? And I'm surprised by that, actually, because we know that tech is not a female dominated field and we know that construction isn't either. But I think that women and people from non-traditional backgrounds are coming to the industry and seeing the opportunity to bring a technology skill set to an industry that needs it. And I think that that is a role that technology can play in construction as well to address the labor shortage.
I'll agree and possibly add that it's the cool factor, right? So if the perception is antiquated and slow and maybe not the coolest place to be, similar to how construction tech is now attracting investors. And honestly, when I started, everyone said exactly that. It's antiquated, it's laggard, it's going to be slow to adopt. It's about making it easy. It's about making it interactive. And I agree about the robotics kind of like comments. We don't do robots, but I still think they're cool. And they're definitely part of the attraction for younger generations. But it's the same concept of usability, and for both GCs and owners, and honestly anyone on a job site, to actually have that ability to attract the talent by saying, we're using these tools, we're making your job easier. We're allowing you to make decisions that are based on data and not based on 40 years of experience that you don't have, and slightly less intimidating. And we will see more talent, the same way we've seen investments kind of come into this industry.
I like how you say it's an attractor. I used to say that construction was a check your tech at the door sort of industry, right? Like the world around us was changing and evolving, and like you can do so much with like that little phone that's in your pocket, right? And then you came to construction and you're like, all right, let's whip out the paper and let's like have these conversations about like what's getting built. And Tess and I were talking about it the other day, right? Like let's snap the line on the concrete and like put up the wall. And that's very different today, and it is exciting. And so I think when you look at the labor shortage and how technology is really affecting it, it's one part attracting new labor to the industry, and it's one part changing the quantity and the type of labor that we need. And I think that that's really exciting and needed as well.
Thanks for that. So I take technology and robotics makes construction for everyone. And also following up on this line, right, about the skills that you need and how we're attracting a more different talent with different types of skills. As we see all these new technologies coming into the industry, which new jobs are being created, which new skills we need, but also which new skills someone who's already in the industry can learn to, you know, help on this move and also continue developing on their career.
I don't think it's about teaching new skills, right? I think it's making technology very usable for any level of skill that's actually going to make this easy and adaptable. That's one of the things that Versatile is really insistent about. It's part of our DNA. If it's not easy, it's just not going to get adopted, and you're going to wait for anything between 5 and 20 years for the generations to change and for tech-savvy people to pretty much take any role, and maybe that never happens, right? So to me, it's not so much about teaching new skills, but making technology very, very easy to adopt across the board. I think robotics does the same, right?
It's totally about teaching new skills and creating new jobs. So when drones came on the picture, right, there's now a role for a drone operator on a construction site. You have to be FAA certified. You have to have the skill set. The same is true of layout robotics. We are now teaching operators, including many women, to how to operate our robots. And some of them are taking on new roles inside of their company with even more job security because they are the layout operator. They are the person who, you know, uses the robot. They take the robot from job to job, and that's what they do. And they are so proud of that. And so we're creating a new opportunity for people to come into the industry, use technology, and get really excited about it. It's a very dignified work, so they're not, you know, crawling around in the dirt on their hands and knees anymore. And they get to say that, you know, I built this building using a robot, and that's so exciting.
I actually think this is a pretty complicated question, but maybe I'm overthinking it. There are new skills that we're teaching, but I think sometimes the technology actually makes it so that skills I used to need, I maybe no longer need. And what I mean by that, and I think like actually both of your companies are like great examples of this. To build in the field, you know, these guys had 40 years of experience that brought them to where they are today. Simply put, I mean, we talked about the labor shortage before. We do not have 40 years to make the next great superintendent, right? And so we need technology to like take what the, that 40-year superintendent knew and bring it to the young people. We need to use robotics and sensors and all sorts of technology to just like change the skills. So why I think it's a complicated question is like, yes, there's new skills coming into our industry, right? We never needed FAA drone pilots before. Our companies never had data analysts, data scientists before, right? But there's also skills that I think we need to rethink how much we would need to know them versus like technology sort of enabling it. Does that make sense? I hope so.
From your past experiences in different industries, in different companies, what learnings did you make that you have now bring into the construction industry?
I guess I'll go first since I'm coming to the construction industry from healthcare, which I actually think it's similar, right? And I think that healthcare is just 10 years ahead of construction in terms of technology adoption. And I think most industries follow a similar curve of technology adoption. But I think one learning, and especially if this room is mostly startups and tech companies, is that change is slow, right? It takes time. And often we want to go from 0 to 100, and we know innovation's important, and we know we're trying to solve all these big problems like yesterday. But the truth is, like, it's going to go from 0 to 1 to 2, and you need those little steps in your path towards change, your path towards reaching your final outcome. And so I think even myself, sometimes I get so excited, I'm like, let's just go for the biggest solution, digitize everything. But those little incremental steps are part of the process of getting us there.
So I've learned a lot. I'll share two of those things with you. So Dusty is my second robotics startup. One of the things that I learned in my last start, I learned a lot of things not to do in my first startup. One of the things that I learned is that if you really want rapid adoption, you have to build a product that is really 10x better than the current way of doing things. It can't be an incremental improvement, because if you're trying to change behavior, if you're trying to bring a new product into a market that's never seen anything like it before, you have to have a big differentiator. People are not going to change their behavior to just get like 2% more improvement for most cases. There might be industries where that's true. But so that's one of the things that we're aiming for, is like, how can we make building, especially the layout process, but layout is the underpinnings of the entire building process. How do we make that 10x better than the way it's done before? And so that's really motivated how we've designed our product and why we're seeing the rapid adoption that we have. The second thing that I'll talk about, coming from a different industry, coming from robotics, my expectation is that industries are fully automated. Like, if you buy something on Amazon and it shows up at your doorstep in 2 hours, there aren't that many people in that workflow. It's mostly robots. And so coming into construction, what I see is a lot less automation than that. And so it's a lot of opportunity, right? I'm looking at construction from the lens of, well, of course the industry should be automated. And so when you look at it that way, you see, well, what's missing? And those are the opportunities.
Yeah, it's a greenfield at the end of the day. Coming from Intel, in my case, this is mainly about kind of like that process approach and the process control that I was talking about earlier. If we do actually understand that most of the kind of like construction process is actually controllable, that it is repeatable, despite the fact that it's a different design, it's technically a different building, even different materials, but there's so many elements that could be automated, that could be repeated. I think that's one of the biggest things, but I agree with the kind of like previous speakers in terms of we've got a long way to come, but I'll also say I see fast adoption, and it's about the technology out there, and since we did pull the room, make it usable, make it easy, and that's how construction catches up with the rest of the world. It's not the industry that's slow. It's the solutions that need to actually meet the industry where the industry is and drive that adoption. So that's my hope as well.
Your question's kind of interesting because I've never been in another industry other than construction. I joined the construction industry when I was 3 years old. My first job site was shortly thereafter. I was telling somebody at dinner last night, my 7th grade science fair project, I built a hydroelectric power plant because my parents were like constructing a real hydroelectric power plant. And so I don't know, these problems are like very much a part of like my problems to solve, right? And it's an industry that I love and I care a lot about. But I do sometimes think like, hey, I need to force myself to like think outside the box, right? And to get those different industry perspectives. So that's why like I love being on this panel with you three that had an industry before construction, and somehow we attracted you here, which I love. But all the time, like video game conferences sometimes, right? To like learn about virtual reality. Or, you know, right now we're doing a digital twin for a healthcare facility. We made a point to talk to people outside of facilities management and design and construction so that we could understand like their core business, right? And then what a digital twin would mean to them. So I think it's very important that as an industry, we continue to infuse ourselves with outside ideas.
It's amazing to hear all your backgrounds and different paths and all the learnings that you've made through your journey. Also, wanted to bring in one more question, and we had someone come into the room and say, oh, wow, there is an all-women panel. And I have a few stats that I wanted to share and hear your thoughts. So according to Construction Dive, 9.9% of people in construction are women and only 3.2% of the field workers. So we all have worked in male-dominated industries, including construction. What can we do to increase the number of women? We heard robotics. And I love that one, right? Seeing it as an equalizer. What else can we do?
Well, I think it's important to ask women what roles they want to be in, right? So coming from tech, there was always a conversation around how do we get more women into tech? And then it became how do we get more women into leadership positions in tech, right? So while I hear those stats, I think we should understand what we want it to be, right? It should probably be more than what it is, but what is the goal that we're aiming for so that we can benchmark ourselves to know our process in getting there. And I think, you know, we should ask, do women want to be in the field? And if so, what do we need to do to make that accessible for them versus do women want to be in the office? Do women want to be in tech? And then take the steps appropriate to make those opportunities available.
I think one of the biggest things that we can do to attract more women to the industry is to show them women in the industry. So actually, I think, right, like things like this is such a great part of it. When you interview at a company, right, like you need to see yourself there. When you're looking at a company website, you need to be like, hey, this is a place where I can grow. And so today, I think that there needs to be almost like a spotlight, right, or an amplifier on those 9.9%. So that people coming into the industry, maybe from another industry, like these three ladies, right, or first graduating from college, that they can see themselves there.
Yeah, I'll probably just add, and I don't think gender is an issue per se. I always say that if the company is solid, if the solution and the problem that you're trying to solve is that big, it really doesn't matter. I will say it is about being seen. Because if that 9.9% or 2% or whatever doesn't step up, or actually take the stage like we're doing right now, then you don't even know they exist, right? So if we wanted anyone to aspire to be anything at all, and really could be anything, I would say forget construction or tech for a minute. Just set a good example for your children, male or female, by the way, and teach them that everything, absolutely everything is in their power and that they set their own future and they're only thinkers, I'll say, in their own minds. So that's true for everyone, not just for females.
So here also I'm going to add something today, following on the whole idea, right, of having more role models, of increasing visibility. We will have a women's lunch at 12:30 that it will be moderated by Giulietta. And Giulietta and I co-founded 2 years ago Women in Construction Tech, exactly with the idea on how we bring more women to the industry, how we can have a space where we can share and grow and increase visibility. So thank you for pointing it out, and I hope that you can join the lunch. So we have just 1 minute left. What is most exciting for you right now in construction?
I'll go first, I guess. Sheer adoption and that perfect storm that Danielle was talking about. I think that's the most exciting thing that's happening right now. Downturns and kind of like uncertainty is also the biggest opportunity ever. So I'm just seeing a ton of goodness and so many opportunities. So that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I came to this industry because I saw there were so many problems to solve. There's so many solutions available. And so that finding of the right problem to the right solution to unlock the next big step forward, that's what I'm excited about.
GCs and trade partners willing to adopt new technology.
Despite no owners being in the room today, actually what it gets me excited is more and more owners are joining that conversation, are starting to ask that question, right? Like, what is this digital twin thing? Like, well, let me tell you, right? So when they're joining the conversation, we can do really powerful things.
Thank you so much for all of you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you for everyone for being here.